Belief is the enemy of knowing.
All right, man. Welcome to Crow 777 Radio. This is episode 408. Jason Lingren is with me, as is Clive DeCarl. He's back for, I don't know, what's it getting to be? 5, 6, 7 times? I don't know. I'll have to go count. We're going to do what we do with Clive. For everybody listening, there is a link, an image link under every episode to Clive's products. A lot of people are using them regularly. I know I do. Magnesium. How many people have we interviewed where every single one of them to a person says everyone's low on magnesium? That was clearly true of me. Taking magnesium saved me from my hand getting cut open to fix my fingers. All I needed was magnesium. Anyhow, welcome, Jason.
Well, after a very large thunderstorm last night, we have a very warm and humid morning.
All right. So we're going to touch on a number of things. One of the things that will come up is the snake venom idea that really popped up just a couple, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4 days ago. When this comes out, we have probably already interviewed Dr. Ardis, and we're going to try to find out what's what. So much of it seems to fit the symbolism, but appearances can be misconstrued. So we're going to try to do what we can to narrow it down. And by the way, these are things that if they're correct, there should be some provable method with water or other things that would show it pretty quickly. Anyhow, welcome, Clive.
Thank you very much, Crow. Thank you, Jason. Lovely to be with you again. Fantastic.
Do you have any idea how many times you've been on?
I think it's 8 or 7. I think this is number 8, I think, but I might be wrong.
It's been a lot of times, and a lot of people are using your products regularly. I see the links go over. All right, well, let's jump in here. Is there anything you want to say before we hit the bullet list?
Well, just simply that, with all of us are in this journey of discovering new information, and since we last spoke, I've done some research onto about 3 products which have just knocked me sideways with what the results can be for people. So I hope it's going to be a really interesting show.
Okay, and are all these things we're going to talk about things that you have stocked and can provide those who want them?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's jump in, I guess, with proteolytic.
Well, proteolytic enzymes simply are enzymes that digest protein. Now, there's sort of 2 types of protein, you might say. There's the protein that makes us up. That's like good protein. Then there's foreign protein, which isn't us, isn't our bodies. So, everything's made of protein. So we eat food, and let's say we eat a big steak full of protein. Well, as we get older, we don't digest food the way we used to. So for some people, if they took a protein digesting enzyme, that would do a lot of the digestion for them, and ideal for somebody old, for example, who can't eat much, doesn't have an appetite, and they'll still have the potential to grow muscle and so on, be strong. But if you used it differently, if you used a protein digesting enzyme at least 2 hours after a meal, what it would then digest would be any foreign protein that is yours. So an example of a foreign protein might be a cyst. It could be a tumor. It could be fibrosis. And fibrosis is scar tissue, and scar tissue sort of forms a bit like a spider's web. And let's say that somebody's arteries are damaged and might sort of crack, burst because they're not coherent enough. Well, then the body would create scar tissue and like a spider's web to wrap around the artery and keep it strong and functioning. But of course, scar tissue probably only works 1/10 as well, as efficiently as real tissue. So what you want to do is to reverse that scar tissue with healthy tissue. And we've discussed it on previous shows that you can do that with MSM sulfur. MSM sulfur is on the site, and we've done previous shows mentioning that. But proteolytic enzymes are, I would say, the more powerful of the 2 to do this job. So let's look at it this way. Who has the most enzymes in general in their bodies? Well, children. Now, babies, young children, bounce really well. The toddler is falling flat on their face all day long. And so long as, the parents don't panic and say, "Oh, you hurt yourself," as long as that doesn't happen, they just pick themselves up and carry on, don't they? And young children, they bounce pretty well as well. And they're pretty resilient. Now, a child can sort of sprain their ankle. And if they're young enough and healthy enough, 10 minutes later, what would have possibly laid out you and me for a few weeks, that they have so much proteolytic enzyme activity in their body that the body self-repairs really fast, like 5 minutes, whatever it might take. So, but as we get older, we lose this ability to repair instantly. Now, let's say you had a sprained ankle. Well, not only, it would hurt because it's inflamed. Now, proteolytic enzymes actually reduce inflammation as well. And once you've reduced the inflammation, then the pain goes. So proteolytic enzymes, I think, are probably the most underlooked. You could look at vitamin D or magnesium and say, well, that's number one. But proteolytic enzymes are so incredibly important as we get older that they sort of need looking at in depth. And they've been known about for an incredibly long time. But some, 40 years ago or something, the Japanese were investigating silkworms, not for medical reasons or health reasons, but they were very intrigued by silkworms because when the silkworm goes into the chrysalis before it comes out as a silk moth, the chrysalis becomes rock hard. You might not even be able to break it open with a hammer. It's that hard. But when the moth wants to come out, it excretes a proteolytic enzyme which dissolves the chrysalis in seconds, and it can fly away without a predator catching it. And they were so intrigued by this material, this incredible material from the silkworms, that they looked into it in Japan and found that there was actually a bacteria that was doing this. So they started cultivating it in the lab. And now, 40 odd years later, it's very popular to give racehorses because you don't want racehorses with any scar tissue in their bodies. And if they're, pushing their muscles to the limit and their ligaments and tendons to the limit, then this, along with MSM sulfur, is given to racehorses because it dissolves scar tissue, eases inflammation, hopefully ends pain. So it is a massive, massive thing. And I think really everybody should consider putting it near the top of their list.
So the only things that I'm aware of that I've witnessed firsthand that deal with scar tissue, one of them is the Gerson method. So I'm guessing, I'm taking a shot in the dark, that a proteolytic enzyme would be found in a correctly juiced vegetable or fruit juice. Is that correct? Is that the enzymes that are being preserved when you press juice the correct way?
Well, yeah, most of the digestive enzymes come from vegetables. I mean, famous ones like papaya for papain. There is bromelain, which comes from pineapples. And there are a number of different ones, the ones to digest fat and so on. So very often, yes, it's vegetable sources that these come from. And I mean, let me give you just a few examples of common ailments that people have that can be corrected, but they may not know how to do it. Circulatory problems, varicose veins and stuff. While often there's a vitamin C deficiency involved, a proteolytic enzyme should fix varicose veins. Arthritis, joints, muscles, there's pretty much every reason, again, along with magnesium and vitamin C, one or two other sort of classics, which everybody needs, basically. That should end. There's lots of research done on MS, for example, because, the myelin sheath, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, if that gets damaged, which is multiple sclerosis, to a degree, it can be reversed with a proteolytic enzyme. Lung diseases, how many people got emphysema or asthma, bronchitis, bronchiectasis? All these are scar tissues. It can be dealt with. Quite a number of ENT issues, sinuses, for example. I mean, let's say somebody's had the experience of having to have surgery, that there'll be scar tissue left. People sometimes after surgery have adhesions. You can dissolve all this.
What form is it in? Is it like a tablet or is it a capsule with powder in it? How do you take the proteolytic enzymes that you provide?
Yeah, small capsule with powder. And I mean, you can just swallow the capsules, or if you want to sort of ultimate efficacy, you could open the capsules, mix them with a little bit of water, and hold it in the mouth for as many minutes as you like, because the receptors in the mouth are incredible. So you want to make a supplement go a lot further, last a lot longer, be a lot cheaper. Hold it in the mouth as long as you can, and loads of it will go right in that way.
All right. Well, you've got my attention. Put me down for some proteolytic enzymes. I'm going to have to give that a first-hand checkout, Clive. I have members of my family that do have asthma, and I found that so many just herbal and other remedies that people have, they help so much more than those stupid inhalers that do damage. But you brought up proteins, and I wanted to make a point that I've noticed in the media lately. They're using protein because in people's minds, it's important to your diet as a way to sell food that'll kill you. Like a Hot Pocket is a good example. 100% bad food. And they'll advertise it as, hey, man, look at these Hot Pockets. It's got 16 grams of proteins now. So they're pushing all these foods based on the idea that proteins is positive in the mind. And I just wanted to put that out there so that people don't fall for it. But if I order proteolytic enzymes, which I will do when we get off the air, how will they come to me? Is it in a little, like a typical bottle, or
just a normal bottle as you'd expect? Some capsules are quite large. These are pretty small, actually.
All right, I'm game.
Like everything, I'd suggest on day one you start with 1. I'm currently taking 10 a day. I'm taking 5 when I first get up in the morning. Because it's a proteolytic enzyme, you have to do it on an empty stomach. So the best way for me is the moment I wake up, obviously I'm on an empty stomach, I've been asleep all night. So I take it then. And then, because I don't like to eat late at night, I'll take some before bed. So it's no effort to avoid the protein, if you see what I mean. Because if you take them while after you've eaten protein, then instead of working on your cysts or your ulcer or whatever it might be, it's going to work on the food, which is great if you're having problems digesting proteins. But that may not be much more important to dissolve scar tissue and fix inflammation. Because, look at it this way. Cancer is an inflammatory disease. Your heart problems are inflammatory disease. Everything that we die of, barring old age, you might say, is either inflammation or scar tissue. People have diseases which have names ending in itis, which is inflammation, or names ending in osis, which is scar tissue buildup. So, people tend to die from one or other or both. So if, as I'm trying to suggest, by using a few carefully chosen supplements, because suddenly you know what you're doing, which doctors have no idea. Doctors don't know this stuff. They're not taught it. It's not their fault, so to speak. They don't know. But the longer I do this work, the more it's occurring to me that it's simpler and simpler and simpler as I understand just the simplicity of how the body works. Scar tissue, inflammation. It's not so hard to figure out. And when you realize that they are keeping from you, and these products are elite. Well, some of the products I'm going to be talking about are illegal in Europe. You can't get them. But in Germany, it's not the case. Germany, along with Russia, have got a whole different way of doing regular medicine, that doctors do. And so in Germany, if you go for surgery in any hospital, they give you a proteolytic enzyme before, during, and after, so that scar tissue doesn't form and you form your body back together again after the surgery naturally. How obvious is that? The Germans know it, but they don't do. Nobody in England knows it, doctor-wise. Don't suppose anybody in the States, except for the few really switched-on doctors, have any idea that such a thing exists. It's criminal.
There's the power of laws and things. I use a thing from Dr. Reckweg, who had German brothers who were some of the best alchemical, I don't know what you'd call them, tinctures type things. And you can actually find these on Amazon. But I was talking with Fortune de Saint Germain, and I started studying these guys. And it's true. There are places, and you mentioned one of them, that are far away from our kind of drug-controlled systems. But Jason, you want to get anything in on proteolytic enzymes? Because I know I'm a customer as soon as we get off here.
Definitely sounds interesting. What changes have you seen in yourself, Clive?
Well, not really anything I could put my finger on, but then the problem is that I try too many supplements to know which one's doing what. And that's the problem. So if I was only doing one, then I could say, oh, it made a huge difference. But I'm taking several, not a lot of supplements, but a few every day. And basically, I feel better now than I've done for decades. But I can't tell you what did it.
Better living. And another thing about the proteolytic enzymes is I used to have a problem with cysts until I worked out. It was things that the VA hospital were giving me. I think people who have been put on long-term painkillers often have trouble with cysts. So it'll be interesting for me to check that out. But let's keep moving along. Let's jump over to nano-picosanol. I think that is.
It just before we make that leap, I'd just like to say that cysts generally form through a lack of iodine. That's, I'd say 95% of the time, what causes a cyst, not enough iodine.
Well, that's interesting too, because of the things that I get from you regularly, fulvic minerals and iodine are two that, nearly every day I'll be taking a few drops of those. And by the way, Clive provides all the things that we've talked to this point.
It's very important that I add a couple more things about proteolytic enzymes because they dissolve blood clots, right? Which is right in the news, isn't it? The blood clot thing. They dissolve blood clots. That's what they do. What we'd class as non-living tissue, they'll fix. Another couple of important ones that people might want to know, arterial plaque dissolves it. Migraines that are vascular can fix them. Here's an important one for men, enlarged prostate. And it goes on and on. I mean, the list is incredible, but it's not surprising because everything, generally speaking, problems involve all the factors and it fixes the lot. So with the nano-picosanol, this has been sort of extraordinary, really. We talked about it on 3 or 4 shows back, and I wrote to all the clients that had bought it, which was at that point, I think, about 1,500 people. So I got a reasonable feedback from people as to what sort of results they were getting. Now, some people, a few, got a result on day 1. Others got a result 3 months in. And I'm still taking it, hoping it might affect my type 1 diabetes. And the inventor said I should wait at least 9 months for something to happen if it was to happen. But I can give you a few examples of what people have found. Just got a list, and I'll just get it out. So I think one really big one was menopause. This woman had used it for about 3 months, and all her menopause symptoms by then had ended. And then about 3 months later, she stopped taking it for a month. All her menopause symptoms came back. Then she started taking it again, and they all went away again.
That's kind of a big deal, Clive. I know women who, some of the nurses that help come and take care of my mom, they have horrendous hot flashes. I feel bad for them. You can see them sweating. So that would be one of the symptoms, right? Those terrible hot flashes.
But again, hot flashes are a symptom of iodine deficiency. Anything that's temperature related, somebody takes your hand and says, oh, you've got cold hands, or you're really hot. That is an imbalance of the thyroid. Thyroid controls temperature, and iodine essentially controls the thyroid. So ludicrously inexpensive, $30 worth of iodine, which will last a year, is probably at least part of the answer. And as previous listeners might remember, that if you take iodine, you also want to take selenium at the same time. But so many problems can be fixed there. I mean, it controls all the hormones. But back to nano-picosanol, I'm just looking through a list of people who've said results. This woman says that much less menstrual pain, her lower back pain had decreased, and her belly fat had decreased. And the funny thing is, a remarkable number of people report belly fat going down. Now, it's very important for me to point out that I'm not suggesting that nano-picosanol is the answer to any of these problems, because it doesn't quite work that way. What it is an adaptogen, like an adaptogenic herb. And So it seems to work like this. Your body knows what needs to be dealt with first. We might have half a dozen health issues, some of which maybe we know about or are aware of, others that we don't. But the body will choose the most important thing that it needs out of the choice of things that need to be done. So on one person, they may have menopausal issues, but actually in them, it might fix something that it sees as more important. So a load of people say that it improved their digestion. Probably the next most reported was pain relief, from arthritis to pain in all sorts of ways. Quite a lot of people felt it gave them more energy and also felt it made them calmer at the same time, which is sort of what you want, I suppose. Quite a few people found they ate less as a result. A number of people along those lines. Quite a few people mentioned immunity. And I think they're probably talking about they used to get colds, but aren't anymore. But I'm not quite sure. I haven't gotten sick all winter. I have 2 autoimmune diseases, so my immune system is usually taxed, but not this year. Skin improvements. Nanopicosinol's got 3 patents, which you normally can't get for a natural product. And one of them is for the whole psoriasis, eczema type of stuff. There's general improved well-being, increased awareness of the body, and knee pain improvement. Asthma is another big one. Quite a few people saying that their asthma improved, although often just vitamin C alone in big doses can help that. That's the sort of thing that we're getting. It's a spray. You can spray it straight on the skin for skin issues. But most people just take it as a spray, under the tongue, and it tastes of nothing in particular, really.
It is a spray. The nanopicosinol is a spray.
It's a spray, yes.
That's one of the things you sent me, isn't it? Are we talking about the thing that was hard to get and you finally managed to get some?
But that's the one. It's got a red label with nano written on the top.
Okay, I didn't remember that was the name. I used, I think, 2 bottles of that, Clive, and was quite impressed. I had a feeling of well-being. I didn't realize that was the same thing until you said it was a spray. I remembered it as not being picosinol. Does it say something else on the label?
Yes, it says nano as the big letters on the top. And there are all sorts of reasons why. Then in smaller letters, it says everyday wellness spray, cellular support.
There it is. It is the same thing. I remember the cellular support. Yeah.
There are reasons why I'm calling it nanopicosinol, which is what it is, but it's slightly different to what it says on the label. So, very interesting material. I wish everybody was getting great results, but the people who haven't, maybe they just haven't tried it for long enough. But I've got several interviews with the inventor and other people about it, and quite a lot of testimonials from people. And the people who've been selling it longer than I have are saying something like 90% of people will notice it. Now, I haven't had quite enough experience yet. Not enough people have come back to me who've done it for that sort of length of time. But one of the really interesting things, the one I'd like to talk about in more detail, actually has a direct correlation to the proteolytic enzymes, and that's vitamin K2.
Okay.
Now, this is another product on the website. We may or may not have sent it to you in the past, but it is the answer for cavities. People are unaware that back in the 1930s, an American dentist figured out how to reverse cavities. And he did it with the original natural form that he found of vitamin K2. The dentist was Dr. Weston Price, and I think a lot of your listeners will have heard of him. And in the 30s, was a regular dentist, he realized that dental problems were a modern problem, totally modern problem. So every summer, he would go out over the years, with an increasing team of people. And he went to India, for example, all sorts of places where he knew they were eating the original diet. When they're eating the original, didn't matter what part of the world, they didn't brush their teeth. Some people might use a stick or something, but brushing teeth was not happening. Toothpaste wasn't happening. Never found anybody with a cavity or problems with their teeth. He found people whose teeth were brown, people whose teeth were green, but he didn't find cavities. But what he quickly realized was that the moment they started eating Western type food, their teeth started falling apart, and he wanted to track down what it was. What was it? Everything about the old diet, or was there a magic bullet, you might say, in traditional food? And he found it, and he called it Activator X, and he started making it as a supplement. And he took grass-fed butter and cod liver oil, but the grass-fed butter had to be made in May, June, July, just when everything was growing at its most rapid rate. And he was reversing cavities with this. And but for the vegans, the good news is you can get it from natto. It's about the only vegan source of K2, natto. And the supplements we do, of course, are vegan, made from natto. And there are different types of K2, but our one is the top version, the most bioavailable. But the story of K2 is way, way deeper than that. And if it's all right, I'd like to go into a bit of depth, if I may.
Go ahead.
So one of the most useful components of our body is called osteocalcin. Now, osteocalcin allows calcium in our bodies to be used properly. Now, if you don't have enough osteocalcin, then what could happen is to repair arteries, and 20% of artery repair is just calcium buildup. So to repair arteries, it'll steal if you're not getting enough, if you're not able to use the calcium you're eating, and most people are eating loads of calcium actually, if you haven't got enough osteocalcin to use the calcium, then the body will rob the bones of calcium to stop you dying of a burst blood vessel, right?
Which, if I'm not mistaken, in this country, so many older women are told that their bone density is going down, right? It must be that.
And their bone density is going down because they can't get calcium into the body. Why can't they get calcium into the body? If you lack K2, your osteocalcin, there isn't enough osteocalcin to use calcium. So K2 is so important. It is the answer for osteoarthritis. Anything with an osteo is a lack of K2, basically.
Osteo being related to bones? Is osteo
yes, exactly.
Okay.
It's your bone thing. Exactly. So osteocalcin removes calcium from blocked arteries so the body can recycle it and put it back in the bones where it belonged in the first place.
Is this relating to hardening? Is that what's going on with hardening of the arteries?
That is. You get a hardened artery. That's because it's lined with calcium. So it's like rock. At autopsy, if they cut open the main artery from the heart, they can do it with a pair of scissors, but they need a saw to do it in an old person who's got calcium in their arteries, a saw. So when they say your arteries are stiffening, they really, really are. So just to be clear, the link is that K2 makes osteocalcin work, which fixes calcium. So you can unblock the arteries, you can lower blood sugar in a diabetic by maybe 20-25%. Osteoporosis, heart disease, all these can be impacted positively. How many people are low on K2, one way or another? Pretty much everybody.
Clive, where would it be? I wanted to ask two questions. There was something about strawberries, and they had some magical thing to keep your teeth plaque-free or something. But if people were eating in the old way, say we went back 100 years ago, and people are eating, what would the K2 be in that they were eating back then?
Cheese, milk, chickens, eggs, any animal product. In Japan, it would have been natto because that's a regular food for them. And then you'd have to be fermenting foods I think, to get it any other way. I think fermentation, we make all our vegan enzymes, using fermentation of vegetables and stuff.
Is there something about the way eggs are farmed in the United States which kills the K2 delivery? Like where I am in Rhode Island, I'm in a farm area and the eggs are the best you can get. I can't find an egg in California as good as any egg I find here because of the way they're farming. But are you suggesting that the mass farming of chickens and eggs, that kind of cruelty thing they're doing, is that killing the K2?
Well, yes, because they're feeding, chickens should be eating not just grass, but wildflowers and everything that a meadow contains, herbs and all sorts. And they should be in the sunshine, but birds are often kept indoors and fed genetically modified soya.
Right.
They're going to be ill, so they give them some antibiotics so they stay on their feet. A friend of mine used to supply lighting, artificial sun lighting, to chicken farmers where they had like hundreds of thousands of chickens in one barn. It was free range. There was an entrance outside, but you had to step over another 100,000 birds to find it. But legally, they were allowed to call it free range because there was an exit. The chickens had problems reading the signs, obviously.
I think most people have no idea. When I realized the difference between the eggs here in Rhode Island and everywhere else I had been, it's astonishing. I had always eaten eggs for breakfast and I'd kind of got over it. And then when I got back here and remembered, oh yeah, best eggs in the world. It's like night and day. The color of everything. It's like night and day from the kind of processed food that you get in California because there's so many people.
If you're an egg manufacturer, there are color charts. So there are different feeds for every color of egg yolk you might want. You want a really orange one? No problem. You want a really yellow one? No problem. It's so artificial. I mean, it's horrendous. Factory farming, and I think America's got to be as bad as anywhere in the world. It's absolutely terrible, and they're polluting the groundwater with the cow muck. I mean, it's horrendous. Yet, clearly our ancestors ate wild meat when they were lucky enough to catch one. And the primary thing that the carnivore, the animal carnivore, for instance, would eat as the first choice was the liver, which has the greatest amount of vitamin K2, greatest amount of vitamin A. But, spinach has vitamin K1 in it. And after the body has utilized K1, which is the blood clotting factor, if there's any left, you'll get it as K2. But it's not to say that you can eat bundles and bundles of spinach, because spinach is full of oxalates and you can get kidney stones from too much spinach and kale and so on. So clever eating is sort of an art. Our ancestors were brought up with it. They knew how to eat. It's only recently that we've sort of lost that fabulous knowledge.
We quit following the sky clock. But anyhow, so the vitamin K2, is that a tablet when you provide it?
Again, a small capsule. Let me go a bit further with it. So fresh food has, this is the work of Dr. Weston Price, right? Almost 100 years ago. He found that fresh food had 4 times more water-soluble minerals than American food in the 1930s, and that it had fresh food just in India or wherever, any other country that was using old-fashioned farming methods, had 10 times more fat-soluble vitamins. That's like vitamin A, which is important for sight. And he noticed, he took a camera with him to all these trips. You can go onto Google and put in Weston Price photographs, and you'll see these pictures of sort of the natural people eating the old diet with huge smiles, massive wide teeth. They didn't have to have teeth removed. Because we've been eating this vitamin K poor diet, everybody's mouths have shrunk. And with each generation, people's mouths are getting smaller and smaller and the teeth more and more crowded. So if a woman is pregnant and she takes vitamin K2, the chances are that her child won't need braces or anything like that because he won't have crowded teeth. I mean, it's just so massive. And there's a lot of things I'd like to talk about how to have healthy children. But it took them between 1937 and really 1995 to really understand K2. And it's relatively recently, I mean, Weston Price figured it out, but it took a long time for scientists to figure it out. So pregnant women make K2 in breast milk, assuming they've got the raw materials, i.e. eating the right food to make it in the first place. So there are some cultures, the Swiss, for instance, traditional Swiss people would save the spring butter, stuff with the high K2 in, to give to babies and young children, because they knew historically that butter, the Mei-Jun butter, was incredibly health-giving. There 150 years ago, the Alps, Germany, Switzerland were full of dairy clinics because it was that the cows up there were eating the glacier meltwater fed meadows with all the wildflowers and everything, and the cows eating that. And they used to give literally butter and cream cures. Crazy as it sounds.
They're still eating live cheese to this day. They don't pasteurize, the places that are known up there. That's not pasteurized cheese. That's a live cheese.
Well, the difference is ludicrous. I mean, let's say you gave pasteurized milk to a baby cow, it will probably die because you've just murdered its lunch. So because so many of these things are cofactors, vitamin C is a cofactor, and things that you need to make vitamin C work, for instance, are vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin K2. And so if you want to avoid Alzheimer's, you want to avoid multiple sclerosis, you want to avoid dementia, you want to avoid Parkinson's, then K2 is just one of the biggest answers there is. K2 stops the bacteria that causes plaque in teeth. 90% of the plaque that people get on teeth is they're low on K2. K2, if you look at a classic model, what we consider beautiful, they will have the classic K2 rich face. All the facial features are sort of proper. The smile is perfect. And that's a sign of somebody who was lucky enough to get some K2 when they were younger, or their mum did at least. So essentially, there's too little calcium because of lack of K2 in the bones and too much in the arteries. Anybody who's got a curved back, you see old people and they're almost looking down at the ground because their back is curved. That's a deficiency of magnesium and K2. I mean, it's so simple. A doctor should be taught that. And then the moment they see a curve in somebody's back, oh, right, magnesium and K2 cost nothing compared to the cost of a drug. So here's another interesting thing. So let's say, we all know that old people die of cancer or they die of this, that, and the other. But what's the number one killer of old people? It's falling. It's falling over, right? Breaking their hips, that kind of thing. But it turns out, whereas we're led to believe that the old woman falls over and breaks her hip. Nope. It can happen this way. The old woman's hip has got so little calcium in it that it breaks while they're standing up and then they fall.
It's unreal. Clive, this really speaks to the death-based system that we talk about so often. How many people had any clue back in the day when they were doing all this nonsense health safety for food that they were killing the food, taking the life out of it with homogenization and pasteurization? Basically, if you were going to label that properly, you would just say this product is now free of life, right? And this shows the underwriting current of the death-based system that's blooming or trying to bloom now.
So, and while we're on the dairy subject, in Europe, butter melts. In America, butter doesn't melt or not easily. And that's because they deliberately feed the dairy cows cottonseed oil in amongst the other rubbish that they give them so that the butter doesn't melt at room temperature. And I mean, cottonseed oil is a poison anyway. But to give that to cat, I mean, it's just insanity beyond insanity. So let me carry on about osteocalcin because it's just so ridiculous. If somebody wants to get pregnant, what do they need? They need osteocalcin. Where would they have got it traditionally? As I mentioned, from all the spring sort of butter stuff, but they also would have got it from organ meats, which most of our ancestors used to eat. Not my favorite. So let's look at this one. how many people are on warfarin, the blood thinner, right? Now, what warfarin does is it creates calcium in the body. So anybody who's on warfarin really needs to study up, not follow my advice, but study K2 in relation to warfarin. On the warning label they put in a warfarin packet, it tells you all the foods you mustn't eat. What's wrong with those foods? I'll tell you what's wrong. They're so full of K2 that the warfarin might kill the person by thinning the blood too much. I know people who've read the warning label, stopped the warfarin, eaten those foods, and been fine. They'll actually give it away in the warning label. And so, because you create 20%, you up your calcium level for somebody who's already got arterial problems or whatever, then they could just tip over and die.
Look at the word warfaring. It's ridiculous. My mother was on a blood thinner, got in an accident. She almost died because they couldn't stop the bleeding. After the fact, it was when I'd first come back out to Rhode Island to take care of her. I called her MD and said, "Why is my mom on this?" Nobody knew. It hit just like it's like the Peter Frampton album. They just issue it. I'm all, wait a minute. Why is she on this blood thinning drug and almost killed her? No one can answer. And then eventually it was, well, because she could have blood clotting or some nonsense later down the road. And so my mom reached 90 years of age on nothing, on no drugs.
Well, while warfarin previously was used as a rat killer, it's a lot better than the modern blood thinning drugs for that very reason, because with warfarin, they could give you an anti-clotting, give you a clotting factor if you're bleeding to death. But with the modern ones, as you've discovered, it's really hard to stop bleeding with the more modern version of warfarin. Frightening. Crazy.
Who names a drug warfare? Warfare is right in the title.
Yes, quite.
Words have meanings. I mean, and that's a little occult for most people. But when I see a word like that, I'm not interested. I don't give a damn what it does.
In answer to a question you asked earlier about strawberries have something called ellagic acid in it, which is very well known as an anti-cancer agent. And I think it would be pretty right to say that of all the fruits, berries are the best anti-cancer fruit, particularly strawberries. But at the same time, there's a warning. Strawberries, I think, have the most chemicals sprayed on them of pretty much anything, perhaps apart from lettuce.
Right. And it's difficult to get off too, Clive. Here where I am, berries are a big deal. Blueberries and strawberries. And I've finally given up on strawberries. They're so delicate. You can't, I just don't know how to deal with it because they are openly listed as having the most pesticides and other poisons on them.
Well, there's a very good way to deal with it. For $30, you can buy an ozone generator and you get a bowl of water, put the strawberries in the water, bubble ozone through the water for 5 minutes. You could put, if it's an open bowl, you could put a plate on top, so to speak, and have the little tube going through the gap in the plate and the bowl. And all the surface toxins will be eliminated. You can do the same with any food product, even meat and fish. You can ozonate fish, and if it's got worms or something, they should at least be dead worms. Not very pleasant. But
yeah, what does it do to the toxins? Are you saying that it neutralizes things like pesticides, or is it washing them away?
If you ozonate black ink, the chances are it'll turn to water right in front of your eyes. It's worth researching ozone there are all sorts of different ways to use ozone. It's not safe to breathe loads of it. So if you've got it in the kitchen and you're bubbling it away for more than a minute or something, you might want to do it under a cooker hood or by an open window or something, just so you don't breathe lots of it. I've actually breathed loads of it and never had a problem. But so you can take any material and neutralize it. If let's say somebody's been smoking in the house, you want to get rid of the smoke as quickly as possible, you turn the ozone generator on and it will clean the air. If you're in a damp house, let's say you're going to go out for the day and there's black mold, for instance, which can be very, very dangerous. If you go out the house, get an ozone generator that doesn't have a timer that switches off after 30 minutes. You've got one for the house. You might have to spend a bit more for one of those. You can leave it on and black mold will be dead, essentially. That's how the professional mold people do it. They get a very powerful ozone generator and seal the house up, close the windows. And then when they come back into the room, They probably want to hold their breath and open the windows and then leave again, just let the ozone dissipate back out again. Massively powerful. So ozone can be used for other purposes. I've got an ozone generator, which is a medical ozone generator, which runs off pure oxygen. And with that, you can, for instance, ozonate different parts of the body. And ozone is oxygen 3, O3 rather than O2, and can be massively healing. I mean, usually nothing's usually wrong with me, but I must have had a bacterial infection in my throat and I lost my voice. So I rigged up my ozone generator to bubble through a litre of olive oil, because while ozone can be damaging to the lungs, if you bubble it through olive oil, that completely neutralizes its danger factor. So I started breathing large quantities of ozone, and in 1 minute, I'm not kidding you, in 1 minute, I got my voice back completely, from hardly being able to talk to voice back in full. Outrageous.
Wow.
And there are people who there are ozone clinics out there, different ways to do it. I tried an ozone clinic once, which had, you had an ozone sauna. So you got in the sauna with a towel around your neck, so your head sticks out. So your whole body's in the box and your head's sticking out the top. And the first time I tried one of those, some 20 years ago, they switched it on. Within 3 seconds, my body gave me the message, this is what it's like at the waterfall. So at that point, I live right near a waterfall. I went there often, so I knew what the feeling of the water. And so when water smashes against rocks, it creates ozone. That's why you smell ozone at the seaside when the waves are strong. And so within 3 seconds, my body had picked up the ozone. I had gone through my skin up to my brain, and I'd recognized like the smell and the feeling. And then the next time I did it in a much hotter sauna, sitting on a white towel. And they also put carbon dioxide in the booth with my head sticking out the top. And after the session, which was very hot for, I don't know, about 15 minutes or something like that, I got out and the practitioner said, look behind you. And I looked on the towel and there was black, like an image of my bum in black. I thought, bloody hell, what has just come out of me?
What was it?
Don't know. Nasty black stuff. I don't know.
It's interesting as you're sitting there talking about it. I'm thinking like back in the stoner days of my misbegotten youth, they used to have the spray to hide the smell of
pot. That was ozone. That was it. That was ozone.
They called it Oz. It was Oz something. But then Rose just messaged me and said David Avocado Wolf is really big on ozonated olive oil. I hadn't really thought about all these things.
Yeah, but this is the side effect of bubbling it through olive oil. After a while, you bubble it through for days through olive oil, and the olive oil goes solid like a sort of soft wax. And you can ozonate cannabis oil, you can ozonate anything you like, any type of oil, and each one has a different effect. And lots of research has been done over decades for ozonating oils of different kinds. Fantastic for skin issues for some people. All sorts of, ozone is incredible. And, the ozone layer is up in the sky. The cycle of meteorology, where the water evaporates, goes up into the ozone layer where it gets purified, and the O2 becomes O3. Sorry, the H2O becomes H2O2, which is hydrogen peroxide. So it goes up in the ozone layer and gets cleansed. Everything, all the toxins gone. Then it becomes hydrogen peroxide. It rains hydrogen peroxide. Then it gets a certain altitude, and the oxygen extra atom is knocked back off again, goes back up into the ozone layer, and it rains.
Yeah, we're going to be wrapping up here pretty quick, Clive. I was going to bring up the snake venom thing, but by the time this goes out, we will almost certainly have interviewed Dr. Ardis. What would you like to get into the public-facing hour one before we wrap up here, Clive? We only got a couple minutes.
Yes. Okay. I'd like to get in the fact that obviously shortages of everything are coming. So with basic stuff you think you might need, vitamins, whatever, I would suggest you stock up. then I'd like to bring everybody's attention to the Secret Health Club, which is secrethealthclub.com. And I've been totally deleted off YouTube now. All my 13 years or whatever of archives there are gone, but they're all on the Secret Health Club, which is uncensorable. It's based in Iceland, and they have to take a court order out in Iceland if they want to shut that down. And basically, it's sort of an A to Z of ailments and remedies. And I've tried to keep it simple. So, you've got whatever the issue might be, but you, Granny, whoever it is, you can go straight to that issue, and there won't be 100 million bits of information and you don't know what to choose. We've tried to put the information in order. So the chances are the number one is actually the first thing you need to know. You can look up osteo problems and you'll find K2, lots of information about K2.
Clive, is this a private membership association, the Secret Health Club?
It's a private members club.
There it is.
All the information about the Tesla technology, which everybody needs to know about, because the answers to pain and stuff, pain was cured 100 years ago, longer, 130 years ago, Tesla figured out how to reverse pain in minutes. And so if people want to know about that, I'm afraid I'm sort of hiding it behind the club for obvious reasons.
Well, you kind of have to. And everyone listening knows the private membership association work we've done. We're still looking for more information, but basically it's a way to have a membership club that is not beholden to censorship and all these other things, just so you know. Anyhow, anything else, Clive? I got to wrap it.
No, that's the most important thing. Thank you. I mean, I'd like to add, if anybody's in desperate financial trouble and they can't afford to join the club, if they email me, I will give them a special free membership. If you're in trouble, I'm here to help, not making money is secondary.
All right. Just so everybody knows, under every episode, there are little tiny images that link to the places that I have had firsthand experience with that I think are important products. Clive is in the top upper left. There, it says his name, Clive DeCarl, right on the image. That will link you through. They have good customer support, and I use this stuff every day. As a matter of fact, on the tail of this, I'm going to get picosanol, and I'm going to get some proteolytic enzymes, and I think I'm going to try the K2. I like to have firsthand experiences with all these things we bring up. But that does bring hour one of episode 408 to a close. You can get hour two at crow777radio.com. If you're a member, CRROW777radio.com. And I'd like to wish you all a happy, healthy, and higher-minded new era. But before I go, we're going to talk about cold lasers, frequency generators, water filters, addiction, babies, the snake venom thing, which is coming to the fore. These are all some of the things that we'll be touching on in hour two. There it is. Cheers.
Cool.
Belief is the enemy of knowing.